There are names whispered in the shadows, names that carry the weight of fear and rebellion. The Bandidos Motorcycle Club is one of them. For decades, they have existed outside the clean lines of society, a brotherhood defined by loyalty, leather, and the roar of their V-twin engines. They are the outlaws, the bad boys, the men that law enforcement watches with an ever-present wary eye. But tonight, we're going to peel back the layers of that hardened exterior and reveal a truth that most people would never believe. We're going to tell the story of a terrifying day when 30 bandidos didn't ride for turf, or profit, or pride. They rode for a 6-year-old girl named Lily. Lily was a child of sunlight and quiet smiles, living in the seemingly safe bubble of suburban America. Her world was painted in primary colors, but beneath the surface a shadow was growing. Her stepfather, a man named Mark, was a monster in disguise. He was charming to the outside world, a pillar of the community, but behind closed doors he was manipulative, cruel, and increasingly violent towards Lily's mother, Sarah. And slowly, subtly, the shadows started to touch Lily too. It wasn't always a bruise. Sometimes it was a harsh word, a terrifying glare, or the simple, crushing weight of fear that settled over her small frame whenever Mark was near. Sarah was trapped, paralyzed by a combination of fear, financial dependence, and the deep-seated hope that maybe, just maybe, Mark would change. She convinced herself that as long as she kept the peace, Lily would be safe. But the monster never changes its stripes. The pivotal moment happened not in the darkness of their home, but in the sterile, fluorescent light of Jefferson Elementary School. Lily was in art class, a place she usually found solace. They were asked to draw a picture of their family. The other children drew stick figures holding hands, bright suns and smiling houses. Lily drew a different picture. She drew a small, hunched figure, herself standing beneath a towering dark shadow with angry red eyes. When her teacher, Ms. Evans, saw the drawing, the air chilled. Ms. Evans was a veteran teacher, sharp and intuitive. She didn't press for details, but she knew that picture was a scream. She gently sat with Lily during recess, and in halting whispers, Lily told her about the shouting, the breaking of things, and the way Mark looked at her when her mother wasn't looking. She didn't use technical terms, she just described the crushing fear. Ms. Evans immediately filed a report with the principal, Mr. Davies, and contacted Child Protective Services. But the wheels of bureaucracy turned slowly, far too slowly for a child in immediate danger. Mr. Davies, concerned but cautious, insisted on following protocol, requiring an official investigation before taking any direct action. Child Protective Services promised an intake interview in 2 days. 2 days. For Lily, 2 days might as well have been 2 years. The school, in the meantime, was instructed to keep Lily safe on school grounds until the end of the day, when her mother was scheduled to pick her up. However, the one crucial detail that was overlooked, the detail that would set this entire powder keg alight, was that Mark knew the routine. He knew Sarah sometimes ran late, and Mark, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, perhaps seeing the coldness in Sarah's eyes that morning, decided to preempt the inevitable. He showed up at the school an hour early, claiming Sarah had asked him to pick Lily up. Mr. Davies was in a bind. The official report was only hours old. He couldn't legally hold the child, but the look in Ms. Evans' eyes told him he shouldn't let her go. He stalled. He insisted on calling Sarah, but Mark's patience was paper thin. He started to raise his voice, demanding Lily. That's when the chaos began, and that's when the Bandidos entered the picture. How did the outlaws know? Not through some elaborate intelligence network, but through a broken heart and a desperate plea. Sarah's younger brother, Danny, wasn't a good person. He had a past, a criminal record, and a patch on his back that identified him as a full-patch member of the Bandidos MC, a man known simply as Reaper. Sarah had called Danny in tears, not asking for violence but for protection, saying Mark was at the school and she couldn't get there in time. She told him about the drawing, about the terror. Danny, or Reaper, heard the plea not as a bandido, but as a terrified uncle. And in the world of the MC, family protection is the absolute non-negotiable law. Reaper made one call. He didn't need to explain the details, just the key points. A child in danger, a predator at a school, and a mother who couldn't fight him alone. Within 30 minutes, the quiet afternoon in the suburban neighborhood was shattered by a sound like low-flying thunder. 30 motorcycles, powerful Harley-Davidsons, and custom choppers, black and chrome machines, roared down the main street toward Jefferson Elementary. The men riding them were an intimidating sight. Beards, tattoos, leather vests bearing the red and gold colors, patches that screamed outlaw and 1%er. This wasn't a subtle arrival, it was a siege of justice. They parked their bikes in formation, the noise alone silencing the neighborhood. Residents peeked out their windows, frozen with a mixture of terror and confusion. The school, already tense with Mark's angry confrontation, was now utterly paralyzed. Reaper, a man built like a redwood and wearing a permanent scowl, was the first one through the doors. He didn't speak. He just walked with a purpose that brooked no argument, followed by 29 of the most feared men in the state. The sight of these men, these legendary bad boys storming a pristine elementary school, was an image ripped from a fever dream. Mr. Davies, pale but standing his ground, tried to intervene, but the look in Reaper's eyes stopped him cold. Mark, initially emboldened by his own arrogance, froze when he saw the men. He knew Danny. He knew the club. He realized his power over Sarah was nothing compared to the power of the Brotherhood. The men didn't draw weapons, didn't utter threats. They didn't have to. Their presence, their reputation, was enough. Reaper looked straight at Mark, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that cut through the silence. "You touch that child again, and you won't need CPS. You'll need a witness protection program." The message was clear, delivered with a force that only true outlaws can muster. Mark tried to argue, to play the victim, but before he could get 3 words out, the Bandidos simply surrounded him. It wasn't a violent assault, it was a perfect psychological confinement. They didn't lay a hand on him. They just stood there, 30 immovable objects, their eyes cold and focused. The message wasn't just physical, it was existential. They were the law now, and their law was clear: protect the innocent. This overwhelming show of force achieved what bureaucracy couldn't. It neutralized the threat immediately and completely. Lily, seeing her uncle and the men who looked like giants, knew she was safe. The silence was broken only by the idling rumble of the bikes outside, the sound of unexpected salvation. This was the moment the Bandidos transformed from outlaws into angels, a shocking display of protection that the school would never forget, and one that Mark would carry with him for the rest of his miserable life. The question now is, what did they do next? How did they ensure Lily's future safety? And what happened to the bad boy who led the charge? The tension in the principal's office was thick enough to choke on. The silence, after Reaper's chilling pronouncement to Mark, was finally broken by the sound of sirens approaching in the distance. The police, of course, had been called. A high-profile incident involving an outlaw motorcycle club storming a school in broad daylight. But the Bandidos were not panicking. They were prepared. They knew the rules of their world, and they understood the difference between righteous action and unnecessary escalation. As the police cars pulled up, lights flashing against the polished chrome of the bikes, Reaper stepped forward, his massive frame blocking the doorway. He wasn't aggressive. He was simply unmoving, a statue of resolve. Mark, seeing the police, found a sliver of his old arrogance and started to babble, claiming he was being harassed, that the MC had threatened him. He tried to spin the narrative, painting himself as the victim of a gang confrontation. But before he could finish his desperate lie, Sarah burst through the outer door. She had arrived just as the police were cuffing the most visible members of the Bandidos, a standard procedure in any high-stakes incident. Sarah, tears streaming down her face, but with a newfound steel in her spine, ran past the officers and directly to Mr. Davies. She held up Lily's drawing, the grim picture of the shadow, and the small, terrified figure. She then showed the principal and the lead officer, Lieutenant Miller, photos on her phone, not of bruises on Lily, but of the destruction Mark had caused in their home, the broken furniture, the holes punched in the drywall, all clear evidence of his explosive violence. She spoke about Lily's terror, confirming every word Ms. Evans had reported. Lieutenant Miller, a seasoned officer who usually viewed the Bandidos with automatic suspicion, took one look at the drawing and the raw desperation in Sarah's eyes and paused. He understood that sometimes the law is too slow, and sometimes justice takes unexpected forms. He also understood optics. 30 feared bikers had just mobilized, not to sell drugs or fight a rival club, but to protect a child. The news was already breaking on local channels. The narrative was shifting rapidly from gang violence to unexpected rescue. He had to proceed by the book, but his priorities changed instantly. He instructed his officers to detain Mark, not for assault by the Bandidos, since there was none, but for questioning regarding the domestic violence allegations Sarah was now detailing with furious clarity. This was the opening Sarah needed to finally break free. Reaper and his men, having achieved their primary goal, the immediate removal of the threat, allowed the police to handle the rest. They didn't resist arrest, didn't argue. They made their point. They were detained for several hours, questioned about brandishing, disorderly conduct, and public disturbance. But the charges were eventually minimal, focused mostly on the traffic violations caused by the sudden assembly of motorcycles. The police department knew that prosecuting 30 men who were demonstrably acting as guardians of a terrified little girl would be a public relations nightmare, and more importantly, they knew Mark was the real issue. The power of the Brotherhood was not just in their numbers, but in the unwavering moral clarity of their action on that specific day. While the legal storm brewed, the Bandidos ensured Lily and Sarah's safety was permanent. The club has a surprisingly robust network, often used for less savory dealings, but on this day it was used for sanctuary. A remote, secure safe house owned by an anonymous club supporter was quickly made available to Sarah and Lily. The Bandidos paid for immediate legal consultation for Sarah, leveraging connections that could fast-track the restraining order against Mark and secure Sarah full temporary custody of Lily. This was the silent, practical power of the Brotherhood in action, not the violence they were known for, but the impenetrable support system they reserved for their own, now extended to a vulnerable family member. The story spread like wildfire, locally at first, then nationally. The media, hungry for human interest stories with a dark twist, ate it up. The headline wasn't just about the attack, it was about the why. The narrative focused on the men in leather who rode in not as villains, but as the only ones brave and quick enough to answer a child's silent scream. The public reaction was mixed, of course. Some saw it as proof of vigilantism and lawlessness, but far more saw it as a deeply emotional moment of unexpected heroism. People sent cards, thank you notes, and even small donations to the local chapter, intended for Lily's care. The reputation of the Bandidos didn't change entirely, they were still outlaws, but a new, indelible layer was added. They were outlaws with a strict, unwavering code of protecting the innocent. Reaper, the man who led the charge, never sought the spotlight. When Sarah finally came to thank him, bringing Lily, who shyly offered him a small folded piece of paper, a new drawing of her and Sarah holding hands beneath a sun, he simply grunted. His eyes, usually hard and cold, were softened by an emotion he rarely allowed to show. "That's what family does, Sarah," he said, his voice husky. "We take care of our own, your family." And that was the end of the public conversation for him. The Bandidos didn't boast. They simply did what needed to be done, returning to the shadows. But now, the shadows held a little more light. This single, terrifying day did more than just save Lily. It redefined the very concept of a hero for an entire community. It proved that the label bad boy is often just a simplified description, hiding complex layers of loyalty, honor, and a profound primal commitment to justice that transcends legal boundaries. When the system failed, when the bureaucracy stalled, it was the roar of 30 outlaw engines that delivered immediate, uncompromising protection. Mark was charged with domestic abuse and child endangerment, his life rightfully upended by his own cruelty. Sarah and Lily, supported by the terrifyingly effective network of the Bandidos, began the long, quiet process of healing, secure in the knowledge that they had protectors whose loyalty was forged in steel and fire. The Bandidos MC are still outlaws, still a force to be reckoned with, but now the people in that small town know the whole story. They know that sometimes the true angels ride Harleys covered in tattoos and leather, and that when a child needs a hero, sometimes you have to look beyond the badge and listen for the sound of thunder approaching on the highway. And that is the true, unforgettable story of the day the bad boys rode for justice.